All right, so in this video, we're going to be going over how to get jacked. So we're going to be talking about how to train for hypertrophy. We'll go over the different kinds of hypertrophy, how to specifically train for each type, and then different tips and tricks on hypertrophy, and also just basically understanding it and its importance and relevancy to training as a whole. So let's start off by just talking about what hypertrophy is. Hypertrophy is the increase in muscle size. Now, there's two different kinds of hypertrophy that can occur. Now, it'll look the same from an outside view, but internally at the micro level is going to be different. So we have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, and that's going to be non-functional. So that's going to be without a corresponding increase in strength. And then we have myofibrillar hypertrophy, which is functional hypertrophy, where you see a corresponding increase in strength based off of the addition of more muscle fibers. So when it comes to hypertrophy, it's all going to be about two things. Really, it's about tension, but two different types of tension. One is increasing the intramuscular tension. So that's going to be done by creating more force. And the second way to increase the amount of highest amount of tension possible is to increase the time under tension. So increasing the total tension that your muscle has. So to dive deeper on sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is the increase in non-contractile elements of a muscle fiber. So we're talking about an increase in ribosomes, ATP producing enzymes, and just an increase in the sarcoplasmic volume. So this is going to improve the metabolic qualities of a muscle. So like, how energy efficient that muscle can be, but it really doesn't improve force producing capabilities of a muscle. So just because you're getting real big and swole doesn't mean that you're getting that you're getting stronger in the process. It doesn't mean that you're adding actual functional tissue to your muscles. So the way I think about sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is creating space for the addition of more myofibrils or muscle fibers. So that's going to be the contractile elements of your muscle, which is what's not increased through sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Another way I like to think of it is the pump. So just the feeling and actuality of looking big. You think of a bodybuilder like this guy, Phil Heath here. He looks swole as hell, but he's not the strongest guy in the weight room. And that's because the majority of his hypertrophy that he's training and developing is that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, where the muscle gets bigger without a true corresponding increase in strength. So when we're talking about sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and how to train for it, this is going to be just in summary done with lighter loads for higher reps and longer time frames. So when we're talking about load, this is done with loads that are about 50 to 70% of your 1 rep max of a movement. When it comes to the volume of it, it's usually going to be in these higher up ranges of 8 to 15 plus reps per set. Now, if you want to take approach of time under tension as opposed to reps, it'll be about 40 to 60 seconds of work done per set. Now, the total reps that you'll probably do for a movement when you're training for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is going to be about 35 to 50 reps per movement. So that can be like 4 sets of 10, 4 sets of 12, 5 sets of 10, 7 sets of 5, whatever that is, or 5 sets of 7 or whatever that is. But that's going to be the total amount of reps that you get per movement. So again, higher total reps, higher reps per set. Now, when it comes to rest for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, we really want to accumulate more fatigue at the local level. So the rest is going to be a lot lower. So we're talking rest from 60 to 90 seconds between your set. Now, what that's going to do is with this little amount of rest is you're not going to get the ATP production, the ATP recurrence. So you're not going to get that ATP drawn in and be at 100% recovery, but you will get an increase in growth hormone secretion. You'll get an increase in nutrient uptake by the muscles, and you'll be able to create more local fatigue at the muscular level. Now, some different modalities for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy are, again, going to be just light sets, so doing weight that's significantly lighter, but for more reps. You can do slow tempos to get that time under tension. You can do long isometrics to ensure that you're getting between that 40 to 60 plus seconds per set. And then you can do your controlled reps. So that's kind of when it comes to like slow tempos. You're just getting controlled reps, making sure that you actually spend time in that rep and accumulate time and attention over time. Now, as mentioned, this is considered light hypertrophy or bodybuilder hypertrophy. So where you're getting swole, but you're not really getting significantly stronger, or where you just look swole like a bodybuilder, but you're not truly functional in the sense that you can increase the amount of force producing capabilities that you have. Now, the second type of hypertrophy is going to be myofibrillar hypertrophy. Now, this is going to be the functional hypertrophy that we talk about. This is going to be an increase in contractile elements of your muscle fiber. So we're going to increase the amount or the density of the myofibrils, and that's just going to be how the muscle gets bigger. So it's not just pumping the muscle with sarcoplasmic volume. We're actually getting that muscle fiber to get bigger or to increase the amount. Now, muscle fibers synthesize and accrue myofibrillary protein, and then once that myofibril reaches its size threshold, new myofibrils can synthesize and add or get more dense. So that's how it occurs. Now, again, this is an increase in size, and with this increase in size, this myofibrillary hypertrophy comes an increase in the force-producing capabilities of the tissue. So that tissue not only gets bigger, but it gets stronger because you added more myofibrils. So the way I think about this is like pulling and releasing a rubber band. So when it comes to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, there's no increasing the amount of rubber bands or the thickening of a rubber band, right? But when it comes to myofibrillary hypertrophy, you get either a thicker band or you add more rubber bands to where you can produce more force with the more rubber bands that you have. So you're either increasing the size of the rubber band itself, or you're increasing the amount of rubber bands in that muscle, and thereby you can produce more force with it. So when it comes to training myofibrillary hypertrophy, this is that heavier hypertrophy, that functional hypertrophy. So we're talking between loads between 70 to 80% of your max, and really higher because you really can develop hypertrophy from any rep range. This is just going to be where you get that sweet spot of, you know, a lot of muscle fiber addition and a lot of hypertrophy and a lot of strength with it as well. Now, when it comes to this, the reps per set, we're talking heavy hypertrophy. So we're talking about maybe sets of 4 to 8 reps per set. Now, if you go from a tempo perspective, the total time under tension is going to be 20 to 40 seconds per set. So you're not going to be able to last as long and get as much time under tension as sarcoplasmic hypertrophy because it's heavier loads. Now, the total reps per movement is going to be 24 to 40 reps per movement. That's going to be your sweet spot. So we're talking like 4 sets of 6. I don't know. Can't really do math right now, but 4 sets of 8, 8 sets of 4, whatever that is. That's going to be the total reps that you get per movement. Now, when it comes to rest for myofibrillary hypertrophy, this is where we get a little bit more rest to get that full ATP recovery, allow more ATP to get back, and to be fully recovered to lift a lot of weight for a larger amount of reps. So we're talking rest between 120 to 180 seconds of rest. This is going to allow for neural recovery, so recovery at the nervous system, but it's also going to allow for a slight increase in growth hormone, but overall it's going to allow for more weight to be lifted every set. So you're getting more of that heavier hypertrophy. Now, different ways to train myofibrillary hypertrophy are, of course, heavier sets of 70 to 80%, 4 to 8 reps per set. You can do clusters as well. So doing a set, getting minimal rest, and doing another set right after that. Say, you know, cluster sets of 2 with 20 seconds in between at 80% of your max. You're going to accumulate a lot of tension through that, heavier tension as well. You can also do heavier eccentric, so working heavy weight, coming down slow and controlled, and you can also do controlled reps, just working with heavier weight. So again, this is considered functional hypertrophy. Now, when it comes to hypertrophy, we got to quickly understand the differences in fast versus slow twitch muscle fibers and the hypertrophy gains as a result of that. So when it comes to fast twitch muscle fibers, so type 2A and type 2B, these are muscle fibers that generate more force and power than slow twitch muscle fibers. So these are generally going to be the larger muscles that you have. Now, these larger muscles are going to be more fatiguing because there's more output associated with that. So these fast twitch fibers are going to respond best to low reps with heavier load or heavier velocities. And this is usually accomplished with a lot of compound lifts. Now, when it comes to slow twitch muscle fibers, type 1 muscle fibers, these muscles are generally smaller in size, and they generate less force and power than fast twitch muscle fibers do. So because they're smaller muscles, they don't really produce as much force as these fast twitch muscle fibers, and they're usually pretty resistant to fatigue. So you get more endurance with that and more cell content within that muscle. Now, these slow twitch muscle fibers, we're going to respond better to higher reps and moderate to low loads done at slower speeds with usually more instability, so they can act as stabilizers, and they usually can be done or trained a lot through isolation lifts as well. So fast twitch, high load, high velocity, high fatigue. And then you have slow twitch muscle fibers who don't get fatigued, usually smaller muscles, and respond better to lightweight and more reps. So keep that in mind as you're training, because if I'm doing a bicep movement, which is a slow twitch muscle, it's going to respond better to sets of 15, 20, and 25. And if I'm working a fast twitch muscle fiber like my glute, it's going to respond better to those heavier loads via compound movements like a squat. So now that we understand hypertrophy from a more scientific level, let's talk about practical ways that we can get jacked. First, lift heavy. You have to lift heavy in order to recruit more motor units, increase the amount of intramuscular tension, and build a foundation of strength. So the more weight you can lift, for a maximal weight or for heavy weight, the more weight you can lift at lighter loads in that hypertrophy range. So I'm going to get more hypertrophy out of doing 400 pounds for 5 reps if that's 75%, as opposed to if that's 200 pounds for 5 reps, even if it's both 70% of my max. So more weight lifted, more tension created. 2, another tip to get jacked is to add in a drop set or a single set to failure within your workout. So after your heavier sets are done, you got your output, you created intramuscular tension, you recruited those motor units. You can really fatigue those motor units by adding in a simple drop set at the end of it or adding a set to failure at the end. So if I'm doing 5 sets of 5, I might finish my 5 sets of 5, which says heavy, and I might go to a drop set where I drop 20% and I do as many reps as I can to a set of failure, accumulate some more muscular fatigue that way. A third way to get jacked is to give your reps meaning. So add tempo to your sets to control the weight and increase your time and attention. So if I'm just doing 4 sets of 10 and I'm trying to get muscular and I'm just knocking them out really easily, and there's really no meaning to those reps, I'm just going through the movements. I'm not going to maximize what I get from that rep. But if I add a tempo to it, whether it be lifting the weight as fast as I can to produce a lot of intramuscular tension, or as slow as I can to increase the amount of time under tension, depending on your goal, that's how you can really maximize your reps to maximize the amount of hypertrophy that you get from it. Now, eccentric-based training or longer negatives increases muscular hypertrophy and creates the most muscular fatigue. So in the off season, it's a great tool to use to accumulate more muscular fatigue and to get swole that way. And then the fourth way is going to be add in supersets. So there's 2 ways I like to do this. One is the antagonistic supersetting, and this is where you train, the opposite pattern movement. So if I'm doing a push for one movement, I might do a pull in the next movement. This is where you do more work in less time. You increase your muscular fatigue and you increase your hormonal response to it. Or you can do the same muscles as the superset. So this is going to be the same pattern, whether it be heavy or compound work first and then lighter or isolation work after to create localized muscular fatigue. Or you can do supersets if you're doing like power work. You can still get a little bit of hypertrophic response to power work. But if you're doing the same muscle, always go heavy first and then go lighter or faster after that to really maximize the response that you get from that. So here's some quick tips to getting jacked. One is consciously increasing tension. So this is kind of meathead-esque. Becoming a meathead now. But if you just flex the muscle as hard as you can when you're doing your sets, both during your reps and at the end of your reps. So if I'm squeezing as hard as I can on the way up and I squeeze as hard as I can at the top, that's an easy way to increase muscular tension and maximize the hypertrophic response you get from that. 2, and this is super important, especially when we're talking about hypertrophy, is lifting through a full range of motion. So this is going to increase and activate more motor units via a higher engagement of muscle spindles and desensitization of your GTO, so your Golgi tendon organs. If you lift through a full range of motion, you get that pull, you create pull at the muscle, and that's how you recruit and contract muscles, and that's how you activate them. So full range of motion is going to be a huge benefit, a huge tip to continuously getting jacked. And then 3, last tip, maybe the most important tip, is to get strong first. This is how you increase your neural efficiency by recruiting more motor units and developing more motor control. Now, the more weight you lift, the more total volume load that you accumulate, and the more weight lifted equals the more tension and more motor units recruited. So get strong first. Strength is going to be your foundation. You can worry about getting big later, whether you're an athlete, you're trying to be a bodybuilder, whatever the case may be. Get strong first. Hypertrophy is going to come as a result of that. So now we get into the topic of should you train for hypertrophy? Now, this is going to change from athlete to athlete based off your goals, your age, and where you are to your season, but it just all depends. So should you train for hypertrophy? First, you need to consider these 3 things. 1, what is your goal? So if your goal requires you to have more hypertrophy, then go for it. But make sure that it's not something that you have as the utmost important thing, because hypertrophy is probably the last thing you need when it comes to just being a complete athlete. Now, if I'm a high jumper, me training for more hypertrophy might be detrimental to me because it's going to reduce the amount of relative strength and power that I have to move my body weight how I need to. But if I'm a football player, I might need considerable hypertrophy gains to be able to sustain my body, to have the physical structural hardware to support my body and things like that. So it's going to be dependent on what your goal is. 2, what is your age? If you're a young athlete, you have more of a need to train for some functional hypertrophy. If I'm a younger athlete, I need to develop a structure or I need to develop my hardware before I truly focus on developing the software as robust as I can. So the way I see it is when it comes to being a young athlete, my hypertrophic response at the muscle and at the tendon is going to, set a foundation for my nervous system adaptations. If I have strong muscles, develop joints, good motor control, good mobility, that's going to set a foundation to improve the amount of neural efficiency that I have. So if you're an older athlete, you might not have that much of a need for training hypertrophy, especially if you're more developed. So again, your age is a huge consideration. And three, where are you relative to your season? So if you're in week 1 of off season, you have a lot of time till your season starts. You can take on more volume. So it might be a good time to kind of, get jacked a little bit. It's never a bad thing. But if you're in season and you're in week 1 or week 4 or week 12, training for hypertrophy might not be the most smart thing to do, and it might put you in a hole because with hypertrophy comes some sort of fatigue, whether it be a lot of local fatigue, which is normally what's going to be it, or neural fatigue through all that volume that you accumulate. So beware of training for hypertrophy closer to your season. That's another consideration you need to have. Now you can increase hypertrophy while not directly training for it. So that's another thing to understand. If I'm training for power or strength, I'm still going to get swole. I might not get as swole as a bodybuilder, but I'm still going to get swole in the process. If you look at all the best track athletes, football players, basketball players, they're all pretty swole. They all have a good foundation of hypertrophy as well. So you can increase hypertrophy while you're not directly training for it. Now, more volume usually means more hypertrophy. Now, in the long-term view, you may get more hypertrophy working in the early off-season and then taper it as you draw towards the near. So that's what we talked about in point 3 of considerations. You can still add muscle mass while training for other qualities. You just might not need to focus on hypertrophy as much as you would need to other qualities in season or out of season. Now, as training age increases, your reps and tempo needed for the outcome tapers downward. So if I can squat 600 pounds and I lift 70% of my weight, as mentioned earlier, I'm going to get more of a hypertrophic response with less volume than I would if my max is 200 pounds and I'm lifting 70%. So I really don't need to do that much hypertrophy work the later on I get if I'm an athlete, because you're already getting a lot of total volume load accumulated. And the last point on if you should train for hypertrophy is understand this. Being muscular does not really have any implications on athletic performance. So look at a guy like Steph Curry. I mean, he's kind of swole now, but Steph Curry is a freaking menace on the course, on the basketball court. And you can't stop him, but he's like a $120. And he's one of the best athletes in the world. Then you look at an athlete like, I don't know, what you think about, Desmond Bane for the Grizzlies. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong, he's a great player. But he's swole as hell, and you compare him to Steph. Like, if muscle had anything to do with athletic performance, Desmond Bane would be the best player in the league, and Steph would probably be one of the worst. So understand, being muscular doesn't have any true implications on athletic performance. Skill is going to trump that. Speed is going to trump that. Power is going to trump that. Strength is going to trump that, all before muscular hypertrophy has anything to do with any of that. So now let's overview. You can increase hypertrophy by directly training for it, so getting within those rep ranges, or you can increase hypertrophy as a byproduct of training for other qualities like strength, power, speed, things like that. How much volume you allocate to direct hypertrophy should be based on your goals as an athlete, where you are relative to your season, and your age. So early off season, great time. In season, not a good time. Now, when it comes to hypertrophy, tension is the goal. Now, tension via force is the goal, or tension via time under tension. Now, if you're an athlete, you might want to bias that tension via force. And if you're a bodybuilder, you might want to bias that tension via time under tension to kind of save your joints and, make yourself kind of feel good in the process where you're not accumulating a lot of, fatigue at the structural level. Now, when it comes to hypertrophy, or really almost all things, strength is your foundation. It's going to be your foundation for almost all of the qualities. So developing a base of strength is super important for any hypertrophy gains. And then lastly, I don't care who told you this, it's never a bad thing to get absolutely jacked, as long as it's not your only goal as an athlete. So if you're training like an athlete, speed work, skill work, playing your sport, conditioning, and then you kind of want to get jacked too, and do some arms, do some abs, do some upper back work, calf work. It's never a bad thing. It's not going to kill you as long as it's not your primary goal. So training for hypertrophy, it's okay to look jacked, but just understand what hypertrophy is understand where its place is in training and being an athlete, and then see how much you want to allocate to hypertrophy. So I hope this helped you guys understand how to get absolutely jacked, but also get jacked as an athlete. And then if getting jacked is the thing for you. If you have any questions, ask me in the Performance Center and I'll get to your answers as soon as possible.